Now that we've looked at ratio analysis and the internal audit for Twitter, we're now going to look at their internal value chain. Now, whenever we're looking at Twitter, their internal value chain is much different than your typical manufacturing company or your service company, because this is a social media software type industry. So for the primary activities, they have four main primary activities. That would be the software creation, content aggregation, content packaging, so giving that content back out to the end user, and then content execution, so how the end user actually receives that content. So services that support this primary activities would be legal services, sales and marketing department of Twitter, technology and research and development, and human resources. Looking at the primary activities in more depth, we start with this software creation. So what this is chromatic and human content filters. So anytime you tweet something, the underlying network filters out whatever you tweet, and it blocks any inappropriate content and sets these privacy settings. So this is where if you tweet something inappropriate, that they'll block it out and no longer let you tweet it. If you are a private Twitter follower, then you will have a privacy setting set to your tweets. So this underlying working of the software itself sets the stage for all the content and the next primary activities to follow. So this is the underlying base of what drives Twitter. Next we have content aggregation. So that's all the tweets, the retweets, the likes, the direct messages, all that raw data is collected in one instance. Every time that you touch a button on Twitter, all that data is collected. And so they aggregate all of that, and this enables advertisers to start their targeting and collecting data to see your demographics, to see what you like, to see where you're located. And so this next stage is just collecting all the raw data without giving it back to you initially. The next stage, the content packaging, this is what happens almost instantly. We don't really normally see a difference between content aggregation and content packaging. With content packaging, this is your profile page, your timeline, all your direct message feeds, your notifications, any moments or hashtags where you can search things. All of that is executing what was given to Twitter. So what they aggregated and collected as data, they shot back to you. And your notifications when you scroll through your timeline. All of that is how Twitter packages up their product and gives it back to you. So this is where the advertisers can now send out their advertisements. So they collected that data, and now this is where they give it to the right demographics, to the right people who like a certain thing, or to people who live in this area. This is when that advertisement is then put on display because of the content that they previously aggregated in the second activity. The last primary activity is content execution. This is what you view Twitter on. So whether that's your mobile device or whether that's on a web browser. So you can either use the app to view Twitter, or you can use the web browser, which takes completely different forms. So whenever you now have the uploaded content, how you view it is the last stage. So whether that's scrolling through the app and using refreshing the feed that way, or using the online page where you can see more things on a bigger screen. So those have to be tweaked. Again, all of these stages, we don't necessarily see everything's instantaneous for us, but really each one is an individual primary activity. Now looking at the secondary activities, big one's legal services. So these legal services protect intellectual property rights. So every time you tweet, they've had issues with intellectual property rights conflicts and lawsuits. So having this staff and having them aware of all the legalities of intellectual property rights is huge to protecting Twitter as a company. Also, employees and contractors are required to enter into confidentiality and invention assignment agreements because of the innovation and because of all the confidential information that they are exposed to in the process. The second secondary activity is sales and marketing. They have a global sales force and support staff whose only and main focus is to attract and retain these advertisement companies. So they want these advertisements. That's the biggest source of Twitter's revenue. So the sales and marketing secondary activity is a huge focus. And it's normally part of the primary activities, but for Twitter, their primary activity is the content they produce, and that you produce and that they send out. So the sales force is more just getting people in to then get their content. so that they can build their product from their content. So they end up helping these advertisers through the entire campaign cycle, all the way from the beginning to post-purchase, whenever they look at all the big data that Twitter can collect of who liked their status, who retweeted, how many clicks it got from the ad that they decided to post, so that the firms can then build their further marketing campaigns from the data they collect from Twitter. Technology and R&D is obviously a big component of Twitter, but they really outsource to proprietary and open source technology services that actually are continuously innovating, designing new softwares and new products through research and development, and then Twitter brings them in, picks the best one and brings them in to implement into their services. Human resources is obviously kind of combines in the sales and marketing technology. Human resource picks the people that are going to sell and market Twitter to firms so that they can get their advertisement sales. So the hiring and training of these salespeople and the ability for them to be able to attract and retain customers is huge in order from a retaining and generating revenue that fuels Twitter. Lastly, I'm going to talk about the Porter generic strategy for Twitter. So what this Porter generic strategy looks at is competitive advantage versus the scope. So for Twitter, we placed it in the broad cost leadership. So that means that we think that Twitter has a very broad scope. It is a completely global brand platform, and 80% of the users is international. So it expands a wide variety, a lot of age groups of people. Versus maybe like Snapchat that we have as a narrow cost focus, because really it's more people our age that are constantly snapping back and forth, and that's kind of the demographic that they play to in their add-ons that they have through Cosmo or People or Food Network. And then we put Twitter in the cost competitive advantage because they don't really have a lot of advertisements such as Facebook might have. They keep it into low cost. It's a free app. It tries to beat the other competitors like magazines that have subscriptions and newspapers and other TV networks that you have to pay for that you can have instant feed for free. And same with Twitter. Very low cost. It's very free. Don't have a lot of advertisement at all. Versus we put Facebook in the broad differentiator because they appear to such a wide variety, even more so than Twitter, and they differentiate themselves by having almost every aspect of all the other social media is all pulled into one. You can post statuses, you can share pictures, you can share just any items, you can keep a whole collection of that on your wall, things like that. Versus Tinder is a differentiator because they're almost like a app first, a dating service, and they're more narrow focused. They're focused on more of the younger generation and an instant connection just by a simple swipe, and they come with a little messenger, so it's all at the top of your hand.